What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals Bikinis, and Bio Longevity Labs. Check out the description box if you plan on using those sponsors. Q&A video coming at you guys. If you haven't, check out the last couple podcasts that I did. Both of them, two of the highest or most viewed episodes that I've ever done. One of them was with Austin and Josh. That was met with a really good reception. And then I got the opportunity to interview Peter Hilly from the UK, longtime coach and competitor himself. Awesome episode. Probably the most fun that I've ever had recording a podcast, whether I was interviewing someone or I was getting interviewed. So check those two out on the channel. Those are the two most recent videos. And with no further delay, we have a Q&A. This guy asks, can progress in terms of actual size be made training 4 days a week? Absolutely. I have had stretches of time myself where I've made awesome off-season progress training 4 days a week. I've seen it tons and tons of times with clients. So much so, this is one of those things where a lot of times I would do this with clients and I would see how well they would make progress in the off season, but I was stuck in my ways in terms of training 5 days a week. I'm on a cruise right now. I think when I get back into a growing phase, which just means that I'm back to pushing drugs and food, I think I'm going to train 4 days a week. So I could talk maybe on another video about how I plan on splitting that up myself, or depending on what your physique needs, but absolutely 4 days a week. A lot of people have success with 5 days. I think 5 days is the limit in terms of the off season. I just don't see, because if you're doing 5 days a week, at some point you have 3 straight training days. For guys that have any appreciable amount of muscle or ability to train hard, strength, ability to contract the muscle, I just don't see how you can feel recovered and really productive and excited to train a fourth day in a row. A lot of times when I train 5 days a week, that second half of the week that I do have 3 straight training days, the third training day, I often feel like, man, I probably should just rest today. So that's another reason why I'm going to go and do this myself. But absolutely, I think in prep, you're a little bit leaner, and there's probably a less of an emphasis on overall load and like brute strength. And then you could argue it one way or another. I think the off season you need more total drugs to put on new tissue, but also when you get into contest prep, you're leaner, inflammation is lower, you're eating less. So I think that you could maybe argue that you're in a better recovery spot. Also, those drugs that you're going to use in prep might be a little more strong or harsh, depending on how you want to put it. Like, I think about what my recovery is like when I'm on trend. If I'm able to sleep, my recovery is usually pretty good. So I think 5 days a week or 3 on 1 off in prep is good. But in the off season, absolutely 4 days a week can work. I have limited funds for GH. Is it better spent for an addition to a long cruise or save it for prep? I would save your GH for prep, man. First, I would get your money right. Like, if you're gonna bodybuild and compete and like pursue this at a high level, you got to have your money right. But yeah, I think if these are the only options, if you have a limited supply or limited funds for GH during your cruise, is definitely not the best time to burn up that inventory. I would just save it for prep. This guy asks, do you listen to metal at all? If not, what's your music taste for lifts? Love the podcast, brother. I appreciate it. This is Ye Your Lifts on Instagram. I appreciate it, man. Um, I don't know that any of the music that I listen to, I don't really know who would qualify as metal. Um, so I've gone through some different progressions and different music that I like. I'll say this in terms of legs, I've had a leg training playlist that I've listened to and have had saved since probably 2014 or 2015. And it's like one way or another, it's different genres, but it's also like very gritty, I would say like motivational chip on your shoulder type music. So it's a combination of like pretty hardcore rap and I guess what I would consider like alternative rock, like Eminem, 50 Cent, Breaking Benjamin. That's generally, whether it's the actual playlist or not, that's generally the vibe I'm trying to create when I'm listening to music training legs. It's either like hardcore rap or um like some strong, what I would consider like alternative rock. Um like Breaking Benjamin. Let me see. Man, I like Creed a lot for leg day, especially. I know they kind of get clowned on, but I think they make a lot of good music, especially for the gym. Um, so different stuff like that for something like arms, chest, shoulders. I listen to kind of like upbeat, whatever is kind of popular type rap music. It's less of like a head down, go to work like I'm hardcore type of vibe. It's more of like an upbeat, like this is fun type of vibe. So those other types of music are more like back and legs. And then even there are times, I know this is going to sound gay, but there are times, um, especially if I train legs twice a week, I kind of want to get a different vibe going for like one of the two leg days. So I've listened to a lot of Adele in the gym during legs. Again, I know it sounds gay, but if you listen to a handful of her songs, there's probably 10 or 12 songs that I can think of right now off the top of my head. They just have such a inspirational type of vibe to them. And they elicit more of like an emotional internal response for me for whatever reason. Um so yeah, but I don't know that anything I don't really even know who's considered metal, so probably not then. Besides delts and lats, where can I regularly pin my GH intramuscular? Oh man, all over the place. Whether it's gear or peptides or GH, I don't do anything in my lats. I'm too freaked out by it. Especially this guy that wrote in this question, Luke, looking killer, dude. This guy is looking like he's about to win a bodybuilding overall on a show. He's got awesome lats. In general, I don't love the lats. I've heard from older bodybuilders that eventually, if they pin their lats a lot, eventually something tore. Now, I get you could apply that logic to anything, but when you think about it, like I don't know, stretching and getting a big stretch for back and lat training is such a big part of it. It just kind of freaks me out. Um, so with gear or GH, I'll give you all the spots that I routinely hit. Never my glutes. I think the first shot that I ever did in 2014 was in my glute, and I never did it since. I think if you're competing and you're either in classic physique or men's open bodybuilding, you should never pin your glutes. So I like delts, and that can be all three heads. And if you think about the size of your delt and the size of each individual head, that's tons of spots in each individual head. Like I can go all up and down my side delt, and that might be 5 different spots. I've done front delt, and I often do my rear delts. Um, Triceps, the outer head. I never put anything on this in this inner head. There's too much going on. I think your ulnar nerve is in there. And it just seems like when I'm lean, it looks like there's a lot more veins going on in here than there is on this outer head. So I do up and down the outer head of the tri. Um, And then this year, earlier in the year, I experimented with SEO in my biceps. And if you use a smaller needle, especially if you use an insulin pen, like for GH, it's actually not as bad as what I would have expected. So, inner or outer head of bicep. I think the upper outer sweep of your quads is a good spot because that's usually a spot that the skin stays pretty thin and pretty lean. And I've even done my pecs with all of the above gear, um, GH, pretty much anywhere, any spot on your pec. I have done like right under my collarbone, but for me at least, my upper chest is a little bit more hollow than kind of the meaty part down more by my nipples. Um, so yeah, tons of different spots. I don't know that I would I don't know that I would recommend the lats, and I would never do your glutes. Let me see. There's people now that send in like uh, pictures of questions if they can't fit theirs in on Instagram. Okay, so this guy writes in and says, "How do you think your approach to training, nutrition, and PEDs will evolve after you step away from competitive bodybuilding? Will you transition to a TRT only lifestyle, or still incorporate short blasts to maintain size and performance?" Okay, a lot to undress there. I think my mental approach and how I do things for most of the aspects that he mentioned are going to completely change. I will never do like a single leg day the way that I train them now or have trained them in the past. I think the second my competitive career is over, leg training dramatically changes and decreases in risk and performance and which movements I'm going to do. Um, so huge adjustment there. I think in general, I would just, uh, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to train nearly as like heavy or hard or push volume totals to where, I feel a noticeable mental and physical fatigue for days after training, stuff like that. Like I'll probably just do like circuit pump type training for everything. Um, Drugs, I think I would probably just find what would be like the upper range of normal for me. So that might be outside of what normal or like typical TRT is. I think actual TRT, is different for everyone. Like if you look at blood work as much as I do and see like how different the response is for everyone on different doses, there isn't this thing like anything, I see people say anything more than 150 milligrams a week is more than true TRT. Maybe, maybe not. I've seen guys that run 200 megs a week and their total testosterone on their blood work is 740 nanograms per deciliter. And it's like, okay, that's like right in the middle of normal. Like I'd like to be somewhere around 900 or 1,000 in terms of total testosterone on my blood work. So that might be 200, that might be 250 a week. I think that's where I would sit. Um, GH would always be a staple. I think probably anywhere between 2 to 4 IU. I don't see that I would ever go above that. And still, would you still incorporate short blasts to maintain size and performance? No, definitely not. I think once I'm done competing, that'll be it. Um, I have no interest in maintaining size or performance the second I'm done competing. It will be an immediate effort to downsize as soon as I'm done competing. I want to, at that point, I'm just going to want to be as healthy and live as long as I can. And being big doesn't give you the best chance of that. Um, and then once, it may be hard, I may struggle with it. I probably will struggle with it from an identity perspective because for so long I've thought of myself and how other people view me as like a big bodybuilder. But once the competitive side is over, I have no desire, like my mindset is going to have to quickly shift to having no desire to maintain size at all. And just knowing, like, I was, I'm a tall white guy. So I was 6 feet tall or 5 foot 11 and 134 pounds when I graduated high school. I was a twig. So I don't necessarily feel like I was meant to be big and muscular. So the things that it has taken for me to grow have been what a lot of people would consider extreme or too much or whatever, both in terms of drugs and food. And so yes, it's easier to maintain, but in terms of like maintaining a bodybuilder look or a bodybuilding level of size, I have no interest in continuing to do the things that would be required for that the moment I'm done competing. Can you give a quick breakdown of your upper day exercise selection, volume, etc.? For some background, this is a guy that I kind of just gave a little unsolicited advice to online about how he should divvy up his training split. I think if I remember correctly, I think this guy talked about that he was training 6 days a week, and I was just like, "There's no way that you're either training hard or there's no way that you feel recovered training 6 days in a row every week." And he was like, "No, I feel like shit. I feel exhausted all the time." So I was like, "Okay, go to 5 days." And one of them included just like a full upper day. So if I was doing, I've talked about it. I did upper lower and I gave it a fair shake. I gave it a fair crack. I did it for probably 4 or 5 months. And it wasn't my favorite split. But if I were to do it again, or when I read it up for people, I think about in general, because in logically, that means that you're training everything twice a week if you're doing upper lower. So the per body part volume is fairly low, but I think about it like this. I would do an upper back row. I would do a lat focused pull down. I would do a chest press. I would do a side lateral raise. I would do a rear delt lateral. I would do something for biceps and something for triceps. So that's two for back, one for chest. So you're talking about 7 movements for the day. And then how you order them and how much volume you do for each is going to be determined by what you need or what you want. So if you're a competitor, what does your physique need to be as complete as it could possibly be? Um, those are the ones that should go first. And then if you're just not a competitor and you just want to look good, what do you want to improve the most? What's most important to you right now? Um, I think if, like, for example, if you want bigger arms as a priority, do them first. Come in and do biceps and triceps first, and then do everything else. Um, but also, like, if you're, for example, if your physique is pretty balanced, or you just evenly want to grow, I would then probably go in order of output, or like what are your biggest movements. So like that upper back row might be first, that chest press might be second, that lat pull down might be third, and then it might be the shoulders, and then it might be the arms, for example. But I'll leave it up to you guys depending on what your needs and desires are, like how you put it together, how much volume you do. But in general, those like 7 types of movements are how I think about upper days. Due to UGL shortages, counterfeit doubts, should we just go higher dose test and AI with farm GH? No, I think you're big time wasting your money if you're spending money on farm GH. And I also think unless it is a prescription with your name on it that you personally are picking up from the pharmacy, I think there's a way higher chance that your $700 kit of pharmacy GH is counterfeit than it is sourcing international generic GH and spending 50 cents to $1 per IU if you know how to source. And then if you're worried about how legit it is. Order from a source, order one kit, send one bottle off to be tested. If the test comes back legit, order 10 kits from the same source. Um, that's what I've done, and I've had great success. I've actually never sent off a source that failed or even returned like less than desirable results for GH specifically. I've sent off I've sent off other peptides and other gear, and they've point blank failed and been bunk different times. I've never once seen a generic source of GH come back. Like they're always 95 plus percent purity. Usually there's no dimer detected at all, or it's a fraction of a percent. And every source that I've ever tested, and I've tested a bunch, always comes back at least what the label is marketing it as, and almost always they come back as more. So I think you're just majorly burning a hole in your pocket if you're spending money on pharmacy GH. With that said, like, if there are shortages with like DHT drugs, yeah, run high tests. Um, yeah, use an AI if you need to. I would use a ton of generic GH because it's super affordable. EQ, I don't ever really see any problems with it in terms of it being real. NPP or DECA, if that works for you. Like, there's a lot of options. We talked about it on that last podcast. Actually, it's the one with me, Josh, and Austin. It's got like a red thumbnail on YouTube, so check that out. But we talked about it. I mean, even guys that want to be competitive bodybuilders, you could probably get as big as you want to be or need to be on just test GH and insulin. What worked best for you when it comes to building a successful coaching business? So my coaching business and experience has gone in some different waves. So I started and I just started as a bodybuilder, and I would just promote my own process online. I always used Instagram solely for the purpose of bodybuilding. I never put like personal stuff up. I never put relationship stuff up. Um, I don't talk about politics or any of this other stuff. I just talk bodybuilding on Instagram from day one. And before I had many clients or any clients, I just would talk about my own process and why I was doing the things that I would do. And I would try to articulate why I was doing them, so people would see that there was a thought process that went into it. Then as I started to get some clients, like I got to a point where I could pay my monthly bills, including like food and PEDs and stuff, just from clients, all while I had a full-time like corporate job as well. Um, and then I got kind of my full-time start with a big name coach, kind of as the first member of his coaching, what went on to be like a coaching team. So then that was like the start of full-time, what I would say was pretty successful coaching, like financially. And then that didn't last long. I fulfilled a year-long contract there and then went off on my own. And that was almost like starting over. So from that point, I did that because I just wanted to be my own person. I didn't want to always be known as John's guy. So that was kind of the starting point of the business as it is today. So I would say being in touch with as many people within bodybuilding as you can. I would give you the advice of not being particularly selective or picky about who you follow back and interact with and send a message back to online. You never know what can come of it. I've talked to people and given people free information, training help, training splits online for years. And then 3 years down the road, they want to hire you. So I would just always approach things online from the perspective that you're a professional and every opportunity to network could one day be an opportunity for business. Um, the biggest thing that has helped build and grow my business as I stand or being on my own was learning to put myself out there and not being afraid to be disliked. I think a lot of times being authentic comes at the cost of everyone liking you. If you are authentic, and oftentimes, like I do, I have strong opinions about things, you're not going to be liked by everybody. I hear, I get people that respond to my stuff and talk shit to me. I get comments on YouTube, on every video that I put up on YouTube. People are talking shit to me about X, Y, and Z. Um, I even heard, I don't even use it, but I've heard that people on Discord have shit to say about me. And it just doesn't matter. Like, you have to be authentic to yourself. And I think people very quickly and very easily can tell when you're being real and when you're being authentic. So you are your brand and you speak for your brand. So, I would just be yourself and try and get as much of yourself out in front of people. So for me, the number one driver of business since I went out on my own has been YouTube. I used to hate the idea of making content, and that was because I put a lot of effort into making Instagram content or short form content. And I struggled with it because I felt like it was fake. I felt like I had to condense my actual thoughts or something that I wanted to convey to the people into 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And by doing so, it just felt phony. So I started to do YouTube because it gives me the opportunity to give you guys a full thought or talk through things completely. And anyone that's watched this channel knows I'm super long winded. I like to talk through things. I think deeply about things. I'm a thoughtful person. So doing these kind of longer form pieces of content have opened my personality up and kind of given access to people to how I really am. 10 times out of 10 at this point, when someone reaches out to me through my coaching application online, I have a spot that says, "How did you hear about me?" or "How did you hear about my service?" At this point, 10 out of 10, it's from YouTube, or they reference the podcast or whatever. And so most of the time when people are serious about actually signing up and they're not just shopping around, I will say, "Man, I appreciate you reaching out. Let's get on a consult call." And I'll get on the phone with these guys totally free of charge. And so often it's funny to me how often I'll talk to somebody for 30 minutes and then they'll say, "Wow, I can't believe you're just the same guy that you are on the videos." And it's because I'm not faking it. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing um, to fake, right? So it's the same authentic person that you get on the phone that you hear on these videos. So if I had to start over from scratch right now, the things that I would do to build a coaching business I would, in my gym that I go to, I would try to find 4 or 5 younger looking guys that trained like they were serious. I would observe everyone and you know, I wouldn't just rush right in and pick out the first 5 guys. I would give it a couple weeks, or if you've been in that gym for a couple months, I would really observe and see who looks like they take it seriously. And then I would approach a handful of them and see if they were willing to take my advice for free. I would coach 4 or 5 guys for free for a couple months. That way you can learn and you have the opportunity then to kind of share your experience with what you did with them. Then the second best piece of advice that I could give you would be to do long form content. Maybe promote it on Instagram or tell people that you're doing it on Instagram, But I just think if you are trying to be a coach, you are the service, you are the brand. And it's going to be very difficult to convey an honest depiction of who you are on a 30-second reel. And what I've also found is the people that would be attracted to your coaching or hiring you from a 30-second reel are usually not the type of people that stay around for very long or the type of people that I want to work with, period. The people that have come to me and said, "Hey, I watched the YouTube videos, like that's how I found you. I'd love to hire you as a coach." 9 out of 10 times, those guys are my best clients. They are so solid. And that's another big bonus of that comes from being authentic and being honest, is that eventually you start to get back what you put out. When I was with this other coaching team, I was getting a lot of guys that were interested in that type of content. So, not to be a jerk, but I was getting a lot of guys that were overly concerned with the science aspect of things and not appropriately concerned with effort or training hard. Um, and so that's why I just felt like it wasn't a great fit and why I wanted to move on. Now, almost everybody that reaches out, I think they have an understanding of my mentality, my philosophy, and what I'm looking for and what I expect in this relationship. So, more times than not, I'm not having to turn people away or teach people from scratch what it is that I expect because they've listened to enough content that they have a pretty good understanding of what I'm going to be like and what I expect. I mean, at this point, I've been putting out 3 hours of content a week for basically a full year. So those would be the things. I would get some guys that look like they are really into it. And if they are, maybe too young to afford a coach or don't have a coach yet, offer to help them for free for a couple months, use that experience, and then just start putting out information. Be authentic and put it out in a long form. Okay. This guy writes in and says, "How should you typically be feeling when you're pushing a lot of food in the off season? And how do you know the difference between typical bloating from eating a shitload of food versus legit digestion problems?" This is something I get a lot. And people will say, I'll get guys that are in the off season eating a lot of food, or I should say, eating a lot of food for them. There are times where guys send me messages and then they tell me how much food they're eating. And it's just not a lot of food, but it's all relative. So if you're not used to eating a lot, it's not going to take much to feel like you're eating a lot. But to answer the question, guys will be like, "Man, I'm just bloated all the time. I think I have stomach issues." And one of the things that I ask is like, when are you feeling this bloated? Like like this feeling of feeling bloated, when do you feel it? And if the answer is like immediately following a meal, more times than not, that doesn't mean that you're bloated. You're just full from eating. Your stomach volume is full because you just ate a meal. Um, Bloating is like you wake up in the morning and you haven't even eaten anything. You've just fasted for say 6 to 10 hours because you were asleep, and you wake up and your stomach is so distended that you physically cannot pull your stomach in. That's bloating. That's indicative of stomach issues. If you have such bad distension or ongoing gas or terribly loose bowels to where it's causing stomach pain, um, and you like physically cannot look at your food or you cannot hold any food down, those are all indicative of some type of actual stomach issue. If you wake up and you're like hungry for meal one, and then you have a meal, and then you have meal two, and all of a sudden you feel like your stomach is pushed out a little bit, like that's bodybuilding. That's eating to grow. So it's very, very normal. I answered this guy separately in the DMs, just to give him my own personal experience, and I'll share that with you guys. The best off seasons that I've ever had, where I put on like substantial amount of stage muscle tissue, The common theme that I've had is that I would wake up and I would feel ready to eat meal one. I could do vacuums before meal one. I might even like feel hungry or look forward to meal one. And then for the rest of the day, other than maybe like post workout, especially if you have something easy like cream of rice and whey, something that you enjoy, right? Like maybe it has some honey or some berries in it. Other than that, the rest of your 4 or 5 meals for the day are like a 45-minute long force feeding where you just are not excited or looking forward to eating. The food is going to go down and I'm going to get it down. And afterwards, my stomach might feel pushed out, but that's bodybuilding. That's off-season bodybuilding. Especially if you're talking about putting on a substantial amount of tissue in 1 year, let's say, like you competed this summer and you want to compete next summer at a way more impressive look or way more muscular look, way heavier look. Yeah, this is how you're going to have to eat for months at a time, extended periods of time eating like this. This is the majority of my experience in bodybuilding. Like the majority of your time should be spent building tissue. And so building new muscle tissue on your physical body is a crazy process, guys. Like if you really think about it, when you think about anything to do with the body, everything is such a slow process. It's such an adaptive process. So building tangible and visible new muscle tissue to where your shoulders look different, your arms look bigger, that's a wild process. It's an incredibly uncomfortable process. It is by far the most uncomfortable part of bodybuilding. So just understand that it's not supposed to be easy. Like getting big and eating all the food necessary to grow, all of the clean food that's necessary to grow and stay lean is very uncomfortable. And you're going to need to do it for months on end. Favorite off-season carb sources, pretty much anything rice-based. I used to be a fan and I used to personally do cereal, and I just don't do it anymore. I think that the processed sugars, I think that you're more likely to store visceral fat in the off season when processed sugars are a big part of your diet. So I pretty much exclusively use actual rice. I like jasmine rice or sushi rice, and I use creamer rice or rice flour. I get very cheap rice flour off Amazon, and that's basically just plain creamer rice. Those are the best. That and fruits. I used to do a lot of oats, and I have to eat too much now, and I've been doing this too long to where I think my stomach is more intolerant to things. When I was 25, I could eat 160 grams dry of oats as a meal, and it would be no problem. If I eat 40 grams of oats right now in the off season, or when I'm pushing food, it's my stomach's going to be a wreck. So that's another thing. Like, am I bloated? Do I have gut issues, or am I just full? Like, it depends. What are you eating? Like, I would try to limit your carb sources to things that digest quickly and easily. I would also try to limit or be thoughtful about the vegetable sources that you use. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it for carbs. Other than basic, Other than the basics, what are the best supplements for sleep? I think I think you can go way higher than what is generally talked about for melatonin. I think anywhere from 30 to 60 milligrams is totally acceptable and only comes with positives. You may initially feel pretty groggy the first couple of mornings after you do that, but also timing it to where maybe it's not right before you lay down and you're only giving yourself 6 hours in bed. Like if you know that you're going to be able to have 9 hours in bed and then you can take your melatonin an hour before you actually lay down, that's going to set you up for good sleep. And then probably the best one that I could give you advice on would be 10 grams of glycine powder before bed. It's going to taste like kind of sweet. It's actually kind of nice, but it's like this kind of granular powder. Um, And that's been like a game changer for me for sleep. Cognitive peptides you've used, if any. I'm at the latter end of my prep and my brain is mush. So I got a huge cognitive benefit all prep from the combination of Retta, SLU, and MOTS-C. I also got a pretty big cognitive benefit on top of all those from the addition of methylene blue. But I used that very briefly because I ended up using a sleep medication that I understood to be like a very mild SSRI. And I was worried about the serotonin syndrome that is talked about between the combination of those two. I've since come to realize that it would have been fine if I continued it. Um, but those three alone, I got tons of cognitive and physical energy from. I was ready for my show at like 4 or 5 weeks out, like peeled and ready to go. And I dieted that whole time without really, I would comment to Kelsey that it never felt like I was in a diet. I didn't really start to feel the diet until like 2.5 or 3 weeks out. Um, in the off season, since then, I've had periods that I continued MOTS-C. I've had periods that I've tried SS31. I did not use that in prep. And I also, since the prep, I've tried C-Max, I believe it is. And I have to tell you, using any of those, I get no physical or cognitive benefits from any of those in the off season, which I know for sure MOTS-C played a huge role in how good I felt the duration of my prep. So it just tells me that these things are probably way more noticeable and way more beneficial when you're dieting. Ever actually known someone who wasn't growing because of too much stairs or treadmill? I mean, you can definitely overdo your cardio. And if you're someone that needs to, as a priority, grow your legs, I wouldn't recommend the stairs as like your off-season staple for cardio, especially if you're having to do a lot of cardio. Now, I don't know this guy and I don't know his situation. He might be somebody that binges or overdoes his one cheat meal a week. Maybe he's not super adherent to his diet. Maybe he's just a body type that even while on plan, he gets very soft from eating an appropriate amount of food. So if that's you, like you're gonna have to do more cardio in the off season if you don't want to look sloppy. That's just the cost of doing business when you fall into any of those categories. Um, so I think there's definitely a balance, but cardio should definitely be less in the off season than it was during prep, and it should really just be thought of as like a routine continuation, like continuing that routine that you built in prep, and it should be mostly for heart health and then like secondary benefits as like composition and insulin sensitivity. But um, I don't think in the off season when you're trying to grow, cardio should be leveraged to such an extreme degree that you're worried about like caloric expenditure and output. Like it should just be kind of like a piece of the background software. It shouldn't be like a major player. So uh, to answer your question, have I seen it? No, not really, because I don't do this to clients, but it's definitely a thing. It can definitely be a thing if you're overdoing the cardio in the off season. My sessions are already 2+ hours long on lowish volume. Would you try to do more volume if it meant 3 hours? No, I don't want to be in the gym for 3 hours. I love to train, but I don't want to be in the gym for 3 hours. I think that if your sessions are already over 2 hours and you're doing low volume, you're just taking too long in between sets. I get the idea that you don't want to rush into sets, um, and you don't necessarily want to time them or, like I said, rush into them to where you're still out of breath or like cardiovascularly. That's where the limiting factor is for your sets. But if you're doing low volume and your workouts are over 2 hours, you're just taking you're wasting time. Um, I can typically do other than, let's say, other than for legs, I can typically do like 10 to 15 hard working sets per body part in a session, and it takes me like 90 minutes. So I think that you're probably just taking too long on the rest period. So I would start to be more mindful of your rest periods. And then also I would just look to improve the quality of the sets that you are doing. I don't know that just throwing more shit at the wall means it's going to stick. What does Joe's perfect day look like that doesn't involve bodybuilding at all? My perfect day outside of anything to do with bodybuilding looks a whole lot like the days on vacation that Kelsey and I go on. So we have our annual vacation coming up during like the Thanksgiving break, and we'll go and spend 3 or 4 days where we're not gonna bring any meal prepped food. We're going to stay. I maybe shouldn't even say where, but we're going to a nice touristy spot. We have an Airbnb right on the beach, and so we will, wake up. We'll do breakfast at a fun spot locally. Um, Maybe go spend some time at the beach. Maybe find a nice park to walk around at and kind of view the scenery a bit. We'll do lunch out. Maybe go for a nice walk or whatever the case is. Maybe do something else outside, especially this area that we're going is really nice. And then maybe come back, shower, get ready. We're going to go to a very nice kind of dress up dinner, have dinner, maybe have a drink with Kels, definitely have dessert, come back, um, put her through the mattress, and then go to bed. um, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We do that once a year. Last year is when I proposed to her. I took her down to the Keys and proposed to her on the beach at the same time. So this is the 1 year anniversary of that. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a nice time to just kind of reconnect outside of our schedules and spend time together where the two of us and our connection is just a priority and it has nothing to do with bodybuilding. Should you cycle SLU or run it year round? If cycling, the ideal time of year and duration to use it. So I thought about this question, and to be totally honest with you guys, I think if anyone at this point has a hard and fast answer about this, they're selling you something or they're trying to sound like an expert or they're just bullshitting you because this shit has not even been out long enough for us to go through a full year of bodybuilding. Like it hasn't even been a full year that I've heard people using this or talking about it. I used it throughout my contest prep, and in terms of what it does, I think it does make sense to use it year round. Now all of a sudden people are using super high doses. I'm using a higher dose right now because I'm in more of like I'm in a cruise, but we're also using it more so as like a composition cleanup. So to me, I think from what I've seen and my own experience, I think it does have validity to be used year round. But I've seen benefit at very low doses compared to what's being talked about or marketed now. So, it's expensive. It depends on where you're sourcing it or what your budget is. I think something like 500 micrograms during a contest prep or sorry, I think something like 500 micrograms during a rebound or an off season is like more than enough. I don't see why you would need more. Um, but then I think the time that most of these peptides and small molecules shine, and I think the time that they're most worth using are during composition phases. Like you're dieting for a contest, you're in a cleanup during a cruise, or, for the average lifestyle person, if you're dieting for an event, a vacation, a wedding, Or if you're a bodybuilder and you're in a long off season and you need to mini cut, I think that's a good time for a higher dose of SLU. Um, but that's been my experience. I continued the same amount that I used in contest prep during my rebound, and I wasn't like some of the other peptides that I talked about. I wasn't totally sure that I was getting a ton from it because energy is high. I was back to feeling better. And I honestly had a period the first few weeks of my rebound where I was like abnormally flat for that period. And so I don't know whether to chalk it up to the SLU or what else I was doing. But to me, I think you can't, I think you couldn't go wrong if you decided you were only going to use it during deficit phases when composition was a goal. So um, I think that's all. I think that's all for now. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks again to everybody that watches the videos, reshares the videos. I think that's awesome. Anytime that I'm on Instagram and I see somebody like take a picture of their TV or computer or something, and it's like they're watching one of my videos, I think that's awesome. Um, but yeah, much appreciated to everybody that reaches out, leaves a comment, shares the videos, all that stuff. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please. And until next time, I'm out.